Tonight, beneath the quiet moon over ancient Baghdad, a fisherman pulls something from the Tigris that was never meant to surface, a sealed chest, a silent secret, and the beginning of a mystery that will change the night forever. The fisherman stands frozen, his lantern trembling in his hand, casting wavering light across the dripping wood. The river behind him murmurs softly, as though whispering a warning only the night can understand. His heart pounds against the cage of his ribs as he kneels beside the chest. The damp air clings to his skin, cool and heavy, filling his lungs with something between fear and disbelief. He forces the rusted lock apart. It groans, a tired, ancient sound, as though protesting its own awakening. The lid lifts slowly, the lantern light slipping inside, and the fisherman gasps. His breath breaks. His hands go cold. A young woman lies within, still, silent, her face serene beneath the moon's glow, as though she simply drifted into a dream and forgot to return. Her dark lashes rest softly against her cheeks. Her hands are folded with unnatural calm, and beside her, resting like a small, cruel clue, a single red apple, glimmering in the low light as if painted by the dying sun. The fisherman staggers back, his pulse roaring in his ears. The night around him tightens, shrinking to the shape of the chest and the girl who sleeps inside it. The lantern flickers, struggling against the wind, its glow dancing across the apple's skin, and for a moment the fisherman imagines it is watching him, waiting, accusing. His throat dries, his breath shakes. This is not a treasure. This is not a gift from the river. This is a crime wrapped in silence and delivered by the current. He slams the lid shut, his fingers trembling over the iron rim. The world feels suddenly too large and too quiet and unbearably heavy. He must go to the palace. He must tell the Caliph. There is no other path. Some secrets are too dangerous to walk alone. He lifts his lantern and begins the long walk through the sleeping city, past the empty stalls of the bazaar, past the silent homes with their windows shuttered against the night, past the distant shadow of the palace that glows faintly beneath torchlight. Each step echoes, soft but certain, a rhythm the night cannot ignore. The fisherman keeps glancing over his shoulder, half expecting the river to come chasing after him, to drag its secret back beneath the surface. But the Tigris remains still, smooth as glass, as though relieved to have released its burden. By the time he reaches the palace gates, dawn has begun to loosen the darkness, painting the horizon with a pale wash of gold. Guards seize the chest. The fisherman is dragged inside, his heart thundering louder than the footsteps beating across marble floors. Torches flare, doors open, shadows shift, and then the Caliph enters. Harun al-Rashid, ruler of Baghdad, walks with a presence that silences the very air. His robe trails behind him like a moving piece of the night, his eyes sharp, bright, untouched by sleep. He gestures. The chest opens. Gasps ripple through the chamber. The apple gleams. The girl lies unmoving. The Caliph's jaw tightens as though locking a storm inside. His voice, when it comes, is low and dangerous. Who has done this? The fisherman falls to his knees, pleading, trembling, insisting he found her in the river, nothing more. The Caliph studies him a long moment, his gaze steady, piercing, heavy enough to crush stone. Then he turns to his vizier. "Find the murderer," he says softly. 3 days? Not a moment more. A hush settles over the hall. Even the torches seem to bow their flames. 3 days, or the fisherman dies. The vizier bows, fear tightening his features, and slips away into the waking city, vanishing into the threads of sunrise, and somewhere, beneath the golden sky of Baghdad, someone who knows the truth breathes a little too sharply at the sound of footsteps approaching. Someone who has seen the apple before. Someone who knows why the girl was placed in that chest. Someone whose heart is not as still as the river that delivered her. And as the sun rises, warm and bright over domes and rooftops, a long shadow stretches quietly across the city, slipping into homes, markets, alleys, and secrets. The mystery is only beginning, the truth is watching, and the night, though it has given up its chest, still holds more than it is willing to reveal. The vizier steps out into the morning light, the palace doors closing behind him with a deep, echoing thud, a sound that feels less like wood meeting stone and more like fate sealing itself shut. Baghdad awakens around him, the sky warmed by strokes of soft gold, the streets humming with vendors setting out dates and figs, the smell of fresh bread drifting gently through the air dot. But beneath this normal rhythm, a tension coils thin, invisible, stretching from shadow to shadow. The vizier moves quietly through the marketplace, his robe brushing against the stone walkway, his eyes studying every face, every tremble of breath, every hint of fear beneath the surface of early morning calm. Somewhere in this sprawling city, there is a thread that will lead him to the truth. He can feel it, faint like the distant pulse of a hidden drum. He stops at a fruit seller's stall, eyes resting on the apples, red, round, simple things that hold none of the darkness of the one found inside the chest. He picks one up, turns it in his hand. The seller watches him, curious, then nervous. The vizier lowers his voice. "Have you sold many of these?" The seller swallows. "Many, sir, but not like the ones brought from the western seas. Those are rare, expensive. Only a wealthy man could buy them. A clue, soft, but enough to stir the air." He places the apple down gently, as though afraid of bruising silence itself, and moves on. Across the city, a young man wakes with a jolt, his heart pounding, his breath sharp and uneven. He wipes sweat from his forehead, stares at his hands, hands that tremble as though remembering something he cannot forget. He hears the cry of the marketplace outside, the sound of life returning, but none of it reaches him. Not really his. Thoughts are tangled, his mind unraveling back to the day he first saw the apples. 3 of them, perfect, shimmering, like jewels that grew on trees. He had not known that something so beautiful could lead to so much darkness. He sits up, runs a hand over his face, and whispers into the empty room, "I have to go." His voice cracks. The walls seem to lean in closer. He steps out into the street, the sun brushing his shoulders with gentle warmth, but his heart remains cold beneath the weight of truth. The vizier continues his search, walking through narrow alleys where shadows curve, along the walls like sleeping serpents. Women carrying baskets pause to watch him pass. Men whisper behind their hands. Children dart away with wide, uncertain eyes. Fear travels faster than footsteps, and somewhere, in the quiet stretch of a hidden courtyard, An old storyteller sits, cross-legged, drawing shapes in the dust with his fingertip. The Vizier approaches him, drawn by intuition more than reason. "You see much," the Vizier says softly. "Tell me, what did the night hide?" The old man's eyes, clouded with age yet sharp in spirit, lift slowly. "Not what it hid," he murmurs, "but who tried to hide within it." The Vizier's breath slows. "Who?" The old man smiles, a fragile, knowing smile. "The truth," Shay says, "the one who runs from it." Cryptic but true. The Vizier bows and walks away, each step deepening the quiet storm within him. The young man reaches the palace gates. Just as the sun climbs to its highest point, sweat clings to his skin, not from heat but from fear woven tightly around his ribs. The guards move toward him, but his voice breaks through the air before they reach him. "I know the girl in the chest." The words freeze the courtyard. A bird pauses mid-flight. The world seems to tilt. The Vizier hears the cry and turns sharply, his robe swirling like a spill of midnight ink. He approaches the young man slowly, each step deliberate, like a sculptor approaching an unfinished piece of stone. "Why have you come?" the Vizier asks. The young man's breath trembles. Because her death is my fault." The Vizier studies him, his trembling hands, his hollow eyes, the weight of regret that bends his shoulders. "Tell me," the Vizier says, voice low, steady, a soft anchor in rising waves. The young man swallows hard, and the story begins to spill from him, uneven, breaking like a river struggling to escape its own banks. "My father, he brought 3 apples from a distant land, rare ones, beautiful. He gave them to my mother to help her heal." The Vizier listens, expression unmoving, but his heart shifts. "One of the apples disappeared," the young man continues, his voice splintering. "I was playing with it, and a slave stole it from me. He lied. He said a woman gave it to him, a woman who was unfaithful to her husband." The Vizier closes his eyes briefly. A tragedy begins to take shape. "My father believed the lie." The young man's voice collapses. "He believed it so deeply that he cannot finish." The words crumble. The Vizier places a gentle hand on the young man's shoulder. "You do not need to say it," he whispers. The young man breaks, a shudder tearing through him. "My mother died because of me, because of a lie I never meant to create. And I cannot carry this alone." Silence falls heavy, like dust settling after a long storm. The Vizier breathes slowly. The truth is sharp, painful, but undeniable. The mystery of the chest has found its voice, but justice is still waiting. And somewhere, deep within the palace walls, the Caliph paces in quiet thought, his mind already reaching into the shadows where the story is still unfinished, where another truth sleeps, dangerous and restless, waiting to be found. The Vizier stands quietly before the trembling young man, the morning sun casting long shadows across the palace courtyard, shadows that stretch like fingers reaching from an old and sorrowful truth. The air feels still, as though time itself has stopped to listen. Nearby, the guards remain motionless, waiting for a command, breathing softly, their armor catching faint glimmers of gold. The Vizier's voice breaks the silence, gentle, steady, beneath the weight of a revelation that has already changed the course of 3 lives. Your confession? You understand its gravity? The young man nods, tears gathering in the corners of his eyes, glittering like dew in early dawn. I do, he whispers. My father. He killed her, believing she had betrayed him. He acted in anger, but the lie came from the slave, from the apple stolen from me. She was innocent, and I did nothing. His words collapse into the air, fragile, heavy, like a wounded bird's final breath. The vizier studies him, and in the young man's trembling voice he hears something deeper, not just guilt, but the echo of a boy who never meant to become part of tragedy. Come with me, the vizier says softly. The Caliph must hear this, and together they walk through the palace gates, the young man's footsteps dragging as though the stone floors beneath him carry the weight of his regret. Inside the palace, sunlight drifts through tall windows, painting ribbons of warmth across cold marble. Yet even the light cannot soften the severity of the hall they are about to enter. The Caliph stands upon his dais, a figure carved from authority, his robes flowing like nightfall woven into silk. His eyes, sharp and watchful, turn toward the 2 men approaching. The vizier bows deeply, his voice a controlled calm. My lord, the one who holds the truth has come forward. The Caliph's gaze moves to the young man, studying him with the careful intensity of a desert hawk. Speak, he commands. The young man trembles, but he lifts his chin with a fragile kind of courage. He tells the story again slowly, with breaks in his breath, with pauses that pull the hall into deeper silence. The 3 apples, the sick mother, the long journey his father made to bring her something rare, something precious, the stolen apple, the lie told by the slave, the rage it ignited, and the terrible decision that followed. When the young man's voice finally fades, the hall feels colder, as though the truth has drawn all warmth from the air. The Caliph remains still, his expression unreadable. The vizier watches him, waiting for the storm behind those steady eyes to settle. At last, Harun al-Rashid speaks, but his voice is not thunder. It is quiet, low, filled with the ache of a man who has carried the world's justice for far too long. The fisherman, he says slowly, is innocent. A ripple passes through the hall. Relief whispers the soft exhale of a life saved. The Caliph continues. The tragedy lies not in deception alone, but in the swiftness of judgment. A heart clouded by anger cannot see truth clearly. The young man lowers his head, shoulders shaking, as though the Caliph's words have cracked something inside him that was already breaking. But the Caliph's gaze softens with an empathy that surprises even the vizier. You carry a heavy burden, he says, but guilt is not the same as guiltiness. The lie was not yours, the act was not yours, but the sorrow that you must learn to lay down slowly, like a stone returned to the river it came from. The young man falls to his knees, tears slipping silently onto the marble floor. The vizier watches, feeling the weight in the air shift, not lifting. Not yet, but changing shape. The Caliph turns to his guards. Find the slave who told thee. Lie, he says. He must answer for the chain of suffering he set in motion. Guards bow and hurry from the hall, their footsteps echoing down corridors like distant drums of justice. For a moment, the palace grows still. Even the banners hanging from the ceiling seem to hold their breath. The Caliph steps down from his dais, moving toward the young man with quiet, measured steps. When he reaches him, he rests a hand on his shoulder, a gesture unexpected, gentle, human. "Return home," the Caliph says softly. "Mourn your mother. Honor her memory not with guilt but with the life she wished for you." The young man nods, eyes closed, trying to steady the breath that trembles through him. He rises slowly, each movement as fragile as a leaf in winter wind, and is led out of the hall by the Vizier. The marble echoes under their feet, soft, steady, fading into silence. But the mystery, the deeper mystery, is not over. The Vizier knows this. The Caliph knows this. The palace walls know this. Somewhere in the city, the slave whose lie began the tragedy moves through alleyways with careless steps, unaware that the truth is finally coming for him. The sun creeps higher, its warmth spreading across Baghdad, yet within the heart of the palace, the air still feels cool, heavy, as though the story is preparing to turn toward a darker page. And in the quiet, almost unheard, the soft hum of fate tightens its threads around one missing. Peace, the one who set it all in motion, the one who must now face justice, the one still hiding in the labyrinth of the city. The Vizier steps back into daylight, his eyes scanning the streets, the alleys, the riverbanks where whispers gather. The search continues. The shadows deepen, and the city, though bright with sunlight, holds its breath for what comes next. The Vizier moves deeper into the heart of Baghdad. The sun now high above, casting warm golden light that glitters across rooftops, slides through narrow alleys, and clings to the dust rising from the streets. But beneath the warmth, there is tension in the air, a quiet current of unease, the kind that slips under doorways and lingers in the spaces between whispers. Vendors call out their prices. Children chase one another through winding corridors. Water sellers drift past with brass flasks that catch the sun like liquid fire, and yet, beneath the ordinary rhythm of day, the city listens for footsteps, for questions, for the presence of truth moving steadily through its veins. The Vizier knows. The slave who stole the apple and told the lie cannot hide forever. Lies may begin in shadows, but they cannot live there long. He approaches the quarter of the city where servants, laborers, and wandering men share crowded rooms and restless nights. The scent of cooked lentils mingles with the dust. Cloth hangs from balconies like tired flags of forgotten nations. Voices spill from open doorways, laughter, arguments, whispers of things meant only for the walls to hear. But when the Vizier passes, those voices soften, then fade, as though swallowed by silence itself. People move aside with quiet respect, and something like fear. For the Vizier does not walk like a man searching, he walks like a man who has already found what he is looking for. He pauses beneath an archway, the shade cool against his skin. His eyes travel the length of the alley, and in the far distance, a figure slips quickly around a corner, too fast, too alert. The body language of someone accustomed to hiding. The Vizier follows his footsteps, are slow, measured, soft as a whisper. The alley bends left, then right, narrowing until the sky above is just a thin strip of blue resting between the tops of old buildings. And there, in the fading patch of sunlight, the slave stands, breathless, eyes wide, a sheen of sweat on his brow. He knows the search is for him. He knows the truth has reached his doorstep. The Vizier stops a few steps away, his voice calm, quiet, like a tide rising at dusk. "You ran," he says. "Only the guilty run." The slave swallows hard, his hands shaking at his sides. "I stole nothing," he mutters, but his voice falters on the very first word. The Vizier tilts his head slightly. "Your lie cost a woman her life," he says softly. "It tore a family apart. It placed an innocent man at the edge of death. Tell me, did you think your actions would sink with the river's silence?" The slave looks away, his breath uneven. It was only a joke," he whispers. "I never thought, I never meant. I didn't know." The Vizier's expression doesn't change, but his voice grows even softer and somehow even heavier. "Lies are not measured by what you intended, but by what they created." The slave's knees buckle. He drops to the ground, his hands clutching his head as though trying to hide from the very truth he has unleashed. "I didn't know he would kill her," he cries. "I didn't know. I only wanted to frighten the boy. It was foolish, wrong, but I never imagined." The Vizier kneels, his shadow stretching across the trembling man. "Truth," he says quietly, "is not a river you can choose to stop at your ankles. It will carry you whether you wish it or not." The alley is silent now, so silent that even the wind seems to hold back. The slave looks up, his eyes wet, filled with fear and something that might be regret. "What will happen to me?" he asks, his voice breaking. The Vizier rises slowly. "That will be for the Caliph to decide," he says. "But know this, justice is not cruelty. Justice is balance, and balance must be restored." Guards arrive, their footsteps echoing like soft thunder between the walls. They take the slave gently, not with violence, but with solemn duty, for even those who have caused harm are still humans with trembling hearts as they lead him away. The Vizier watches the alley grow quiet again. The dust settles, the sun shifts, life resumes its gentle hum. Yet something has changed. A truth has been found. A thread has been pulled free from the tapestry of this mystery. But beneath it, beneath the layers of confession and sorrow and consequence, the Vizier feels another thread, a thinner one, a quieter one, a thread woven with grief not yet acknowledged. The tragedy is clear, but the story is not complete. Not yet, for in the palace, the Caliph sits in heavy thought, turning the narrative carefully in his mind, searching for something that still feels out of place. And in a small home on the edge of the city, a merchant, the father, the grieving husband, sits alone in a room filled with silence, staring at the empty spaces left by the woman he loved. The city continues around them, bright and bustling, but within these walls the air is thick with memory, with echoes, with the soft, aching pulse of unfinished sorrow. Night will fall soon, and with night, new shadows will stretch across Baghdad's shadows, that may yet reveal what the day has failed to show. The Vizier turns toward the palace, his robe sweeping gently behind him, his thoughts steady, his breath slow. The mystery is unraveling, but the heart of it remains hidden still. And the night is waiting. Evening begins to settle over Baghdad, softly, quietly, as though the sky itself is exhaling after a long, tense day. Light drains from the rooftops, turning gold into rose, rose into violet, violet into the deep, tender blue of approaching night. Shadows lengthen along the palace walls, torchlight flickers in solemn rows, and in the warm hush of twilight, a stillness falls over the city, a stillness that feels thoughtful, listening, waiting. The Vizier steps into the palace courtyard, the soft dusk painting his silhouette in gentle strokes of fading amber. He walks with the measured calm of someone who carries truth like a lantern in the dark, a light that reveals, but also burdens. He pauses, breathing in the cool evening air, and his eyes drift upward to the first star appearing in the quiet sky. There is relief in the knowledge that the Lightler has been found, but beneath that relief lies a deeper ache for truth, once uncovered. Does not heal everything. The heart of the tragedy still beats quietly in the home where the merchant waits, alone, heavy with remorse. And so the Vizier moves again, steps, echoing softly as he enters the palace and approaches the Caliph's chambers. Inside, Harun al-Rashid stands at the window, hands clasped behind his back, staring out at the darkening horizon, a silhouette. Framed by fading light, he does not turn when the Vizier enters. The silence between them is not cold, it is thoughtful, weighted, filled with unspoken threads. The slave has been found, my lord, the Vizier says quietly. The truth is clear. The Caliph's voice comes softly, like a distant drum at the edge of the desert. Truth, he murmurs. Truth is seldom clear. It is a mirror in water, always moving, always shifting. The Vizier bows his head slightly. He understands. The Caliph turns at last, his eyes deep with a sadness not often seen by others. A woman is dead, he says, his tone quiet, measured. A mother, a wife, a life woven into many others. Her story deserves more than answers. It deserves peace. The Vizier nods, and the merchant. At this, the Caliph's gaze softens, not with weakness, but with human weight. He grieves, the Caliph replies. He has punished himself more deeply than the law could ever demand. His voice dips, low and steady. Justice must be given, but cruelty must not be added to cruelty. For a moment, the only sound is the distant rustle of palm leaves outside the window. Then, bring him to me, the Caliph says, before the night deepens. And so, as the last hues of daylight disappear, the Vizier makes his way to the edge of the city, to the home where sorrow sits quietly in the shadows. The merchant's home is small, humble, lit by a single oil lamp whose flame trembles gently against the walls. The merchant sits alone on a woven mat, his face hidden in his hands, his breath shallow, as though each inhale is a negotiation between life and grief. When the Vizier enters, the merchant looks up slowly, eyes red, cheeks hollow. A man carved from regret. You have come for me, he whispers. The Vizier's voice is calm, softened by understanding. The Caliph wishes to speak with you. The merchant rises, but his movements are unsteady, as though his grief has wrapped itself around his bones. They walk together through the dim, winding streets, the city now bathed in warm lantern light. The night hums softly, its breath cool against their skin. The palace looms ahead, not as a monument of power, but as a quiet sentinel waiting for truth. to rest. Inside, the Caliph waits. When the merchant enters, he bows deeply but tremblingly, as though he fears the very floor beneath him might vanish. Harun or Rashid steadies him with a gaze that sees not just the act, but the man beneath it. "You acted in anger," the Caliph says softly, "and anger is a storm that blinds the heart." The merchant's eyes fill again, shining in the torchlight. "My lord, I killed the woman I loved. I will carry that storm for the rest of my life." The Caliph's voice lowers, a gentle echo in the grand chamber. "Remorse can destroy or it can rebuild. The choice is yours." The merchant sinks to his knees, the weight of his guilt finally breaking through his strength. "I would give my life to undo what I have done," he whispers, "but life cannot be returned." The Caliph replies, "Only honored." The room is silent, a deep, steady silence that wraps around them like night. At last, the Caliph speaks again, his tone firm but compassionate. "You will not be executed." The merchant's breath catches. "But neither can you return to the life you once knew." He pauses, letting the words settle. "You will devote your days to acts of kindness and healing, to feeding the poor, helping the sick, providing for those who suffer as you have suffered." Tears slip silently down the merchant's face, and, through such acts, the Caliph continues, "You may find a way to bring peace to your wife's memory." The merchant nods, not in relief, but in surrender to a path long and difficult, a path he knows he must walk. The Vizier watches quietly, the weight of the day settling into his bones. The Caliph rises. "Go," he says softly, "and begin anew." The merchant leaves, his figure dissolving into the hall's shadows, his footsteps slow but certain. When the doors close behind him, the palace falls into a hush, deep, velvety, as though the very air is exhaling. But even now, though answers have been found and justice has been spoken, the night holds one final breath of unfinished quiet, a lingering echo, a soft, unspoken truth still drifting along the river's memory. And the story, though calmer now, is not quite ready to fall asleep. Night settles fully over Baghdad, wrapping the city in a velvet hush, soft and deep like a warm blanket drawn over a restless dreamer. Lanterns glow along quiet streets, little floating suns that shimmer in the evening breeze, their light dances across walls, leaving trembling reflections in the windows of sleeping homes. The river moves slowly now, a dark ribbon weaving through the city, its surface calm, its secrets finally spoken, or so it seems. The Vizier walks the palace corridors, his footsteps gentle, his robe whispering softly against the marble. He carries not the burden of justice now, but the lingering ache left behind by tragedy. A story has been told, a lie uncovered, a life mourned. And yet, the palace hums with a quiet energy, a sense that grief, once awakened, does not disappear easily. He pauses by a window, looking out at the moon rising above the domes, its silver glow brushing gently against the city's rooftops. For a moment, lets the silence rest around him, soft, cool, almost tender in the distance. He sees a lone figure walking slowly along the palace wall, a silhouette outlined by moonlight. The merchant he walks with bowed shoulders, his steps neither hurried nor aimless, but heavy with a quiet resignation, as though he is learning how to breathe again in a world forever altered. The Vizier watches him with a kind of solemn respect, Some burdens cannot be lifted by others, only carried with time. He turns away, continuing deeper into the palace, where the Caliph sits alone in his private chamber. Harun al-Rashid is not a man who fears much, but tonight his heart moves differently. Quiet, reflective, listening to echoes few rulers allow themselves to hear. The room is dim, lit by a single oil lamp whose flame sways gently, painting soft gold across the silk carpets. The Caliph sits on a low cushion, eyes half closed, hands resting loosely in his lap. He is not meditating, he is remembering. He hears the fisherman's trembling voice, the young man's confession, the merchant's breaking heart, the slave's desperate excuses, a chain of suffering all tied to a single fruit, a single lie, a moment of thoughtless cruelty that changed the path of many lives. The Caliph breathes deeply, the air moving slow and warm through the quiet room. Justice has been given, but justice is never the end of a story, only a turning point. A soft knock breaks the stillness. "My lord," the Vizier's voice enters through the half-open door. "You may come," the Caliph says, his tone gentle. The Vizier steps inside, bows, and waits for instruction instead. The Caliph gestures for him to sit. The Vizier lowers himself onto a cushion across from his ruler, surprised by the invitation. For a moment, they say nothing. Then the Caliph speaks, voice low, slow, like a river, easing into calm. "It is strange," he murmurs, "how fragile the path of a life can be, how easily it can be diverted by a misunderstanding, a moment of anger, a lie." The Vizier nods. "I have thought much the same, my lord." The Caliph continues, his gaze drifting toward the window where moonlight touches the curtain's edge. "The fisherman will live," he says. "The young man has confessed. The slave will face justice, and the merchant—" He pauses, breath tight with compassion. "The merchant will spend his life healing others to heal himself." The Vizier folds his hands. "It is a fair path," he says softly. The Caliph's voice dims further, becoming almost a whisper. "Yet still," he says, "my heart is unsettled. Not for the sake of justice, but for the sadness that remains in its wake." The Vizier breathes in deeply. "Sadness is the shadow of truth, my lord," he replies. "It follows even the brightest resolution." The Caliph's eyes soften, and a faint smile touches the corners of his lips. "You speak with wisdom, old friend." A quiet warmth settles between them, like a soft blanket spreading across the room. For a moment, the two men simply sit together in the hush of the night, letting the world outside be carried by the breath of the desert wind. Then a distant sound slips through the open slit of the window, soft at first, barely noticeable. A murmur, a cry. The Vizier rises slightly, head tilted. "It is the merchant," the Caliph says softly, recognizing the grief woven into the sound. They look out and see him standing by the outer garden, hands clasped to his chest, head bowed toward the earth where his wife once walked. The Vizier sighs, a heavy, gentle sound. "Remorse," he murmurs, "is a wound that heals very slowly." The Caliph nods, and yet it heals. Together, they watch the merchant until he retreats into the quiet shadows of the garden. Then the Caliph turns back, his voice softening further. "Let us retire," he says. The night grows deeper. The Vizier bows and departs down the dim corridor, but the Caliph remains still for a moment, listening to the pulse of the palace, soft footsteps, distant breathing, the whisper of wind against stone. He closes his eyes, not in sorrow, not in exhaustion, but in acceptance. Some stories end in tragedy, some in healing, and some, like this one, carry a blend of both, woven so tightly they cannot be separated. Outside, the moon glides higher, its silver reflection flowing along the river that carried the chest into the fisherman's life. The water moves softly, as though finally freed from a secret too heavy to hold. The night deepens, the palace sleeps, and the story, slowly, ever so gently, begins to quiet. But it is not finished, not yet, for every tragedy leaves behind a whisper, a breath of memory that lingers in the dark long after the truth has found its voice. And in the hush of the late hour, that whisper begins to fade, soft, soothing, drawing the city into the calm before dreams. Night moves deeper into Baghdad, settling into every rooftop, every courtyard, every quiet breath inside the sleeping homes. The stars glimmer softly, scattered like tiny lanterns across the dark velvet sky. Their light drifts down into the still, warm air, touching the city with a gentle silver glow. The palace is quiet now, so quiet that even the torches along the hallways crackle softly, as though whispering to the silence. But beneath this calm, the merchant lies awake. He sits alone on a low cushion in his assigned chamber, hands folded in his lap, his gaze fixed on the single candle burning beside him. His flame trembles, its light swaying gently, painting small circles of gold across his weary face. He watches it flicker, and in its trembling glow, he sees memories. His wife laughing softly as she sliced fruit in their kitchen, her voice humming old lullabies, filling the house with warmth. Her hands resting on his shoulders when he returned from travel, their touch familiar, comforting, home memories so vivid they feel like ghosts sitting quietly beside him. He closes his eyes, breathing through the ache in his chest, an ache that no punishment, no forgiveness, no passage of time can fully erase. But he breathes anyway, slowly, deeply, because the Caliph's words still echo within him. Honor her with the life you choose next. He lifts his head, the candle's glow brushing softly against the tears drying on his cheeks. Outside, the night wind rises, moving gently through the courtyard garden. Palm leaves rustle softly, their shadows swaying across stone walls like quiet dancers. The merchant hears the faint sound and stands, drawn toward the window. He pushes the wooden frame open just enough to let in the cool embrace of night air. It smells of jasmine and distant river water, and something else, something like release. He breathes it in, letting the night settle around him like a fragile comfort. Far below, the courtyard glows in moonlight, pale and serene. Agar passes slowly, spear in hand, footsteps soft against the stone. The merchant watches him disappear into the darker stretch of the garden. The silence returns, soft, steady, calming. For the first time in many nights, the merchant's heart loosens just a little, like a tightly knotted rope, giving way to the patient pull of time. He closes the window gently and rests again on the cushion, his hands clasped loosely now, his breath long and even. The candlelight wavers once, twice, then steadies as though keeping watch across the palace. The Vizier sits at his own writing table, quill in hand, paper unrolled before him. But he does not write. He simply stares at the blank sheet, its emptiness mirroring the quiet he feels inside. He has carried out the Caliph's command. He has unraveled the truth. He has followed every thread until the story rested open in the Caliph's hands. Yet his thoughts linger on the deeper lesson woven through the day. How fragile peace is. How quickly a lie can spill into tragedy. How justice must walk hand in hand with compassion, or it becomes nothing more than another kind of cruelty. He sets the quill down, eyes drifting toward the window where moonlight spills in a silver arc across the floor. The night is beautiful, quiet, soft, thoughtful, a perfect night to let the mind soften, to let the heart breathe. But sleep does not come to him easily. Duty rarely sleeps. Still, he closes his eyes briefly, just long enough to feel the night's calm settle like warm sand over his tired thoughts. Elsewhere in the palace, the Caliph himself steps into the royal garden. He walks alone, with no guards, his robe trailing quietly across the stone path. The night air touches him with cool fingers, lifting a strand of his dark hair from his brow. He walks slowly, each step deliberate, as though measuring the rhythm of his thoughts. The garden is fragrant, night-blooming jasmine, mint, a hint of rose. Fountains murmur softly, their water catching moonlight in arcs of shimmering silver. He pauses beside one of them, watching the water fall in a gentle curtain. The reflection of the moon shivers on its surface, beautiful, unreachable. He exhales. Being Caliph means bearing the weight of countless stories that end in fearful hearts, tearful confessions, quiet pain. But it also means guiding those stories toward better endings. He rests a hand on the edge of the fountain, the cool marble grounding him. A soft rustle draws his attention, and he turns to see a palace cat stretching lazily beneath a fig tree, its eyes half closed. The Caliph smiles. Even in the midst of such heavy matters, the world continues in small, gentle ways. He kneels, stroking the cat's head, feeling its soft parasite through the quiet garden. It is a simple comfort, and yet a powerful one. Moments later, he rises again, continuing his slow walk along the garden path. Behind him, the fountains continue their song, a lullaby of falling water for a city learning to sleep. After a day of unraveling truths, as the night deepens, the palace grows quieter. One by one, torches burn lower, their flames shrinking into small amber. Hearts of light, guards drift into half-restful stances, leaning lightly on their spears. The stars shimmer more brightly now, unburdened by the sun's memory, and the entire city breathes in the peace of the hour, soft, slow, the kind of peace that mends something delicate inside anyone who listens long enough. Within the merchant's chamber, the candle finally flickers out, a thin trail of smoke curling upward like a sigh released. The merchant lies back, eyes closing, hands resting loosely on his chest, not healed, not whole, but breathing more evenly than he has in days. The Vizier, though still awake, allows his body to sink into the cushions beneath him, letting the quiet hum of night loosen the tension in his shoulders. And the Caliph, after one last walk beneath the stars, returns to his chambers, closing the door softly behind him. The palace finally falls into a deep, gentle slumber. A slumber the story has long needed. But the night still holds one last whisper, soft, almost, lost, lingering at the edge of the dreaming city. A whisper carried by the breeze as it glides over the river, across the rooftops, through the narrow alleys where truth once hid. A whisper that says, even the heaviest stories can rest. And as the whisper fades, Baghdad settles peacefully into the deepest part of the night, quiet, calm, ready for dreams. The night deepens into a soft velvet quiet, thick enough to muffle even the faintest footsteps, gentle enough to cradle the city in a kind of dreaming silence. A breeze moves slowly through the palace gardens, stirring the leaves with a whisper-like touch that sounds almost like breathing slow, calm, steady dot as the hours stretch deeper toward midnight's heart. The palace becomes a sanctuary of murmurs and moonlight. Every window glows faintly with silver reflections. Every corridor rests beneath a hush woven from quiet stone. The Caliph sleeps at last, his breath steady, his mind finally surrendering to the rhythm of the night. The Vizier rests to not fully asleep, but drifting in that soft space between thought and dream, where burdens loosen and the world feels lighter. In a chamber near the garden, the merchant lies awake for a moment longer. He listens to the wind, to the distant hum of the river's slow current, and his heartbeat begins to soften. He does not smile, not yet, but his breath grows deeper, more peaceful, as though some tight cord within him has finally loosened. He whispers a quiet prayer into the stillness, a prayer for forgiveness, a prayer for strength, a prayer for the woman he lost. The prayer dissolves gently into the dark, carried by night air into the open sky. Outside, the moon sits high and bright, its light settling into the streets like a silver blanket laid over. The city. Baghdad sleeps, shops closed, lanterns dimmed, alleys empty, the spinning world slowed to a soft, dreamy hum. But the river does not sleep. The Tigris moves steadily, quietly, its surface smooth as polished obsidian. It glides past the city walls, past the empty docks, past the bend where fishermen cast their nets at dawn. Tonight, the river carries no secrets. Tonight, it only carries moonlight, thin, shimmering ribbons that flow like gentle threads along the water's back. The river remembers what it held, but tonight it is calm. Its whispers become softer, melt into lullaby-like murmurs winding through the reeds as the breeze drifts from the river toward the sleeping city. It carries a calm that settles gently over rooftops and courtyards, over minarets and markets, over every home where weary hearts finally rest. A cat curls upon a warm stone step, tail tucked beneath its chin, dreaming soft feline dreams. A lantern sways faintly in a passing breeze, its flame shrinking to a tiny glowing pearl, before stretching again with renewed warmth. Even the guards standing watch at the palace gates find their breath slowing, their bodies relaxing, trusting the safety of the night to hold everything in its patient stillness in his chamber. The merchant turns slightly, the blanket shifting across his shoulders with a whispered touch. He breathes deeper now, his chest rising and falling in slow. Even waves. The loss will remain, yes, but loss, when faced, can soften too. It can become something quieter, something that does not tear but teaches. And so, With the gentle patience of healing, his breath unravels towards sleep. Beyond the palace, the houses along the narrow streets rest in silence. A mother hums faintly in her dreams. A child turns, clutching a small wooden toy against his chest. An old storyteller snores softly in his courtyard, a half-finished story still drifting through his dreaming mind. The night holds them all tenderly, as if cupping the entire city in two vast, gentle hands. A soft fog begins to rise near the riverbanks, thin as silk, moving like a ghost with no burden. It spreads slowly, delicately, across the water, up the grassy slope, into the winding paths that lead toward the palace. Under the moon it glows a faint silver white, as though the world has exhaled a cloud of quiet peace. The fog drifts through the gardens, coiling beneath fig trees, slipping over fountains, floating past jasmine vines with the softness of a thought half-remembered. It settles gently beneath windowsills, creeps quietly along stone corridors, and wraps the palace in a soft, dreamlike veil. Inside, even dreams begin to change, shifting from troubled to tranquil, from restless to calm. The merchant dreams of walking beside the river, the water clear, the sky wide, the air warm with peace. The Vizier dreams of soft light over parchment, ink that glides without burden, words that come with ease instead of weight. The Caliph dreams of gardens filled with laughter, of a city bright with justice and gentleness. These dreams are not demands, not judgments, just reflections of quiet longing, the longing for peace after a day of grief. As the fog settles deeper, the night grows softer still, like fabric warmed by firelight, like a long-awaited exhale after a hard-held breath. And Baghdad, bathed in moonlight and mist, drifts slowly, beautifully, into the quietest hours before dawn. Hours where hearts mend without effort, where sorrow becomes softer, where even stories begin to rest. Hours where the city and all who dwell within it float gently toward deeper sleep. And somewhere near the river's edge, a fisherman also sleeps, curled beside his net, unaware that the story he began at dusk has ended here, wrapped in peace. The night heals everything in its time, and tonight, the healing has begun. The fog settles deeper, gathering in soft curls above the gardens, its pale glow blending with moonlight until the night itself feels wrapped in a shimmering veil that the palace breathes slowly, like a great living creature whose heartbeat has quieted after a long day of sorrow and truth. Every window is still. Every door rests in silence. Every stone along the courtyard seems softened by the gentleness of the late hour. Inside the palace, the calm settles layer by layer, descending like petals falling from an invisible hand. The torches burn low, their flames shrinking into small amber hearts. Their light flickers softly against the walls, dancing in slow, sleepy rhythms as though swaying with the lull of the night in the merchant's chamber. The quiet has deepened so completely that it feels like a second skin around him. He lies, still, breathing gently, his chest rising and falling in slow waves of release. For the first time in weeks, his dreams do not open with fear. Instead, they begin with warmth, the warmth of sunlight on a calm river, of laughter drifting through a kitchen, of footsteps echoing down a hallway that once felt like home. The memories hurt, yes, but they hurt differently now. Not as daggers, but as echoes. Echoes that remind him he had loved and been loved, and that even though tragedy cut through his life like a sudden storm, the love itself remains untouched. It lives quietly inside him, glowing softly beyond the reach of guilt. The merchant shifts slightly, the blanket rustling gently over his body. He exhales, a slow breath that loosens some final knot within him. And then, with the patience of healing itself, sleep takes him fully, deep, steady, and peaceful. In another part of the palace, the Vizier rests on a cushioned mat, his hands folded loosely over his chest. Shadows flicker across his face as the torch outside his room dances against the wall. He is not dreaming. Not yet, but he is drifting. His mind moves like a small boat on a calm lake, gliding effortlessly the quiet edge of sleep. The weight he carried all day has softened, melting slowly into the night around him. He hears the distant murmur of fountains in the garden, the gentle hiss of wind against stone, the faint rustle of leaves swaying overhead. These sounds blend together into a kind of nighttime symphony, a lullaby crafted by the world itself, meant for no one and everyone all at once. He breathes it in, long and steady. The tension in his shoulders fades. The crease between his brows relaxes. Even his hands, so often curled in thought, begin to loosen against the linen beneath them. He drifts, and finally slips into sleep, quiet and deep. Farther down the palace hall, the Caliph lies in his chamber, wrapped in soft linens, the color of moonlit sand. The glow of the fading oil lamp reflects faintly against the carved wooden walls, casting slow-moving patterns that sway like gentle tides. Harun al-Rashid has carried the burdens of his people for many years. Some nights, the weight keeps him awake, heavy, demanding, unyielding. But tonight, that weight feels different. Not gone, not forgotten, but held with greater calm. He closes his eyes, and the stillness that meets him is warm, deep, and soothing. He thinks briefly of the fisherman whose life was spared, of the young man who will grow wiser from sorrow, of the slave who will face consequence, of the merchant who will rebuild his soul piece by piece. These thoughts do not trouble him tonight. They drift gently around him, settling into the quiet folds of his mind. He exhales, his body softens, and slowly, peacefully, sleep gathers him into its arms. Outside the palace, the city remains wrapped in moonlit calm. The alleys are empty, the wooden shutters closed, the markets quiet, the rooftops still. Even the animals sleep, dogs curled near doorways, birds nestled beneath eaves, donkeys resting in stables with slow, steady breaths. The entire city rests in a perfect symphony of night. Nothing disturbs the calm except the occasional sigh of wind, the faint splash of a fish turning in the river, or the distant flutter of a pigeon shifting its wings. And the river that carried the chest, that held the secret so long, that watched tragedy unfold from its dark, steady depth that moves quietly beneath the moon. Its surface ripples like silk brushed by fingertips. Its reflections shimmer in silver arcs that drift toward the horizon. The river is lighter tonight, unburdened, settled, as though letting go of a weight it had carried for too long. It whispers softly along the banks, a sound so gentle it becomes indistinguishable from the night air. That whisper moves through the reeds, over the docks, between the sleeping boats, and up toward the palace walls, a whisper that no longer hides secrets, but carries peace. A whisper that weaves through dreams like a soothing thread, binding the city to a shared quiet after a day of turmoil. As the hours pass, the night grows even softer, the kind of softness that invites every thought to slow, every breath to deepen, every heartbeat to settle into a calm, steady rhythm. The moon begins its slow descent toward the western edge of the sky, its light lowering gently over the rooftops. The fog thins, pulling back from the gardens with the lightest touch, revealing stone paths and dew-touched leaves, and the city sinks deeper into its dream-warmed embrace. There is nothing left to fear now, nothing left to uncover, nothing left to carry, only calm, only breath, only night. The story has quieted, the truth has settled, the hearts once torn have begun to mend, and Baghdad, under the watchful gaze of moon and star, rests peacefully, ready to welcome the first quiet hints of approaching dawn. The night settles into its quietest hour, that delicate moment when the world seems to pause, hovering between darkness and dawn, a soft, weightless breath before morning stirs. The moon hangs low in the sky now, glowing like a silver lantern drawn gently toward the horizon. Its light moves tenderly across rooftops and courtyards, touching the city with a fading, dreamy warmth. The palace stands silent beneath this soft glow, its towers casting long shadows that stretch across cool stone paths. The vines along the garden walls seem to sleep, their leaves perfectly still, as though they too have surrendered to the night. Inside the palace, the hush is absolute, the kind of hush that quiets even wandering thoughts, that stills the heart into slow, steady rhythm. The merchant breathes deeply in his sleep, the lines of sorrow on his face softened now as dreams smooth the rough edges left by grief. His mind drifts away from the weight of what happened, floating instead through moments when the world felt brighter, sunlit mornings. The laughter of loved ones, the warmth of a hand intertwined with his. These memories glow gently, not to wound him, but to remind him that even where loss exists, love once lived and remains. He turns slightly, blanket rising and falling to the rhythm of slow breaths. Peace settles around him like a warm, invisible cloak, softening everything it touches. In another chamber, the Vizier lies still, his breathing deep and even. His thoughts no longer race, his mind no longer churns. Instead, he floats through a quiet dream, a dream of parchment and ink, of old stories written beneath lamplight, of wisdom gathered like small, precious treasures in the corners of the mind. In the dream, pages flutter softly as though guided by a breeze, each one carrying words that feel familiar, comforting, true. He does not chase the pages, he simply watches them drift, knowing the story has already been told, knowing nothing more must be solved tonight. His breath deepens, he drifts further into quiet rest, and in the Caliph's chamber, Harun al-Rashid sleeps like a man who has placed the weight of the day down beside him. His dreams are vast, like the desert under sunrise, open, quiet, filled with long, slow breaths of wind and warmth. He dreams of a city at peace, of justice carried gently, of lives mended by kindness. as much as by truth. He dreams of the fisherman casting his net at dawn, the water calm and bright under the sun. He dreams of the merchant walking through a marketplace, the world no longer heavy on his shoulders. He dreams of the young man standing tall again, forgiven by life, ready to begin anew. These dreams settle around him softly, like drifting sand, like a lullaby whispered by the night itself. Outside, the wind moves across the palace rooftops, its touch cool and soothing. It whispers through the gardens, carrying the scent of jasmine and mint and the faint sweetness of figs hanging from branches. The fountains continue their gentle murmur, a delicate, soothing sound that echoes through quiet courtyards and over polished stone. Water falls in smooth, shimmering arcs, catching the last traces of moonlight, sending tiny sparks into the air. The sound is steady, soft, repeating in slow intervals that lull the mind like a heartbeat in perfect rhythm. Far beyond the palace walls, the river glides silently through the darkness, its waters moving with the calm certainty of time itself. The moon's fading glow lays a silver path across its surface, and the ripples, faint and gentle, seem to breathe in harmony with the night. The river remembers everything, the chest, the weight of silence, the moment it gave up its secret. But now its memory rests. The water flows peacefully, unhurried, unburdened, as though carrying nothing but reflections of the stars scattered above. In the city's narrow alleys, all is quiet. Cats sleep on clay rooftops, tails curled beneath their bodies. A lantern sputters softly before settling into a dim glow. A breeze drifts through linen curtains, cool and comforting, like a gentle hand passing across a fevered brow. Homes are filled with the quiet sounds of sleep. A child sighing, an old man breathing deeply, a mother shifting gently to rest her arm over her sleeping daughter. The night gathers these sounds, cradling them with the tenderness of a story nearing its peaceful end. For the city has earned its rest. Its people have earned their calm. The truth has settled. The sorrow has softened. The hearts torn by grief have begun to heal. And now the night offers its final comfort. The stars slowly dim as the sky begins to pale, the earliest, faintest hint of morning stirring at the horizon. But it is not dawn yet. Not quite. There is still time. Time for rest. Time for breath. Time for the world to remain wrapped in quiet dreams. The palace sleeps. The city sleeps. The story sleeps. Everything settles into stillness so deep, so gentle, that even the river's whisper becomes a lullaby for the weary, a lullaby for the grieving, a lullaby for those who listen to stories long after the last word is spoken. And beneath that lullaby, a promise glows softly. Every sorrow passes, every truth finds its light. Every story knows when to rest. And tonight, at last, this story does too. The night leans into its final hour, a soft, delicate time when darkness begins to loosen and the sky prepares for the first quiet breath of dawn. The stars fade slowly, not disappearing, but dimming, as though sinking deeper into the blue fabric of the heavens. The moon hangs low, a thin silver curve resting near the horizon, its light soft and pale, tender as a sigh. Baghdad remains asleep, wrapped in a warm stillness that settles lovingly over rooftops, courtyards, and winding streets. The palace, grand in daylight, now feels like a cradle of calm, its gardens hushed, its torches low, its long marble halls drenched in the softness of night. The merchant shifts slightly in his slumber, a faint smile resting on the edges of his dreams. He walks in that dream through a quiet orchard, light pooling gently beneath the branches, the air warm, the leaves whispering softly overhead. He sees apples on the trees, bright, peaceful, untouched by sorrow. He picks one, turns it in his hand, and feels no pain, only memory, only love, only the soft, warm echo of what once was and always will be part of him. He breathes in deeply, and his dream carries him into a wave of serenity that washes gently over his sleeping form. Across the palace, the Vizier dreams to a calm dream, a quiet dream. He stands on a balcony overlooking the city at dawn, the wind cool round him, the light gold and rising. He feels a deep sense of completion, a recognition that truth has found its place and that justice, though sometimes fragile, has been carefully restored. He exhales in the dream, and the breath he releases feels like the final letting go of a burden he has carried far too long. His body relaxes even further in reality, sinking deeper into the comfort of the mat beneath him. In his chamber, the Caliph sleeps soundly, the dream of a peaceful city glowing softly within his mind. He sees the people of Baghdad walking with lighter steps, their burdens eased, their hearts softened by a justice guided not by wrath but by wisdom. He sees children laughing in sunlit streets, merchants calling out with cheerful voices, and the river gliding through the city with calm, steady grace. His dreams carry him to a day that hasn't come yet, but will. A day shaped by compassion and balance. A day shaped by decisions made in the quiet hours of the night. Outside the palace window, the breeze grows warmer, a subtle sign that dawn is making its slow approach. It moves through the gardens, sending soft ripples across fountains that shimmer faintly in the dim light. The water falls gently, a soothing cascade that blends with the rustling leaves and distant chirp of the first waking birds. The fog thins even more, lifting slowly from the riverbanks, revealing the outline of boats swaying gently in their moorings. The Tigris shimmers softly beneath the fading moon, a quiet guardian that has carried sorrow and truth, and finally peace. Its steady murmur moves through the dawn air, a sound so gentle it becomes a cradle song for the entire city. The sky brightens with the faintest brush of silver blue, just a hint, just enough to soften the darkness into early morning calm. The city sighs not in fatigue, but in release. Homes slumber peacefully, courtyards lie still. Lanterns burn low, their flames quiet and welcoming. The story that began with a chest in the river has moved through grief, through truth, through the tangled paths of human hearts, and now rests in the gentlest quiet of the approaching dawn. The fisherman sleeps peacefully beside his empty nets, dreaming of a day he will cast them again into calm waters. The young man who confessed his part in the tragedy rests too, his breath steady, a new beginning waiting for him somewhere beyond sunrise. Even the slave, held now in the palace's guarded quarters, lies awake only for a moment, long enough to understand the weight of what he caused, and the strange, tender truth that even he, in time, may learn to change, The entire city, wound through with stories of sorrow and redemption, finds its pulse slowing gently toward the rhythm of dawn. Birds begin to stir, soft wings fluttering, their quiet chirps rising like the earliest notes of morning's first song. The sky brightens further, a thin band of pale gold stretching across the horizon, catching the edge of the river, turning the water into a soft ribbon of light. And the palace, once heavy with tension, glows now with the gentle luminance of a night fully at peace. Slowly, steadily, the story unwinds its final threads. There is nothing left to uncover, nothing left to fear, nothing left to carry. Only breath, only rest, only the soft embrace of a night completed. And as the last stars fade, as the sky warms, as the city begins to wake, this story, woven from sorrow and truth, settles at last into silence. A silence made not of emptiness, but of healing, of acceptance, of gentle, quiet peace. A silence that whispers, "Rest now. The night is finished. The heart may sleep." And with that whisper, the story closes its eyes and drifts softly into dawn.